was not expecting anyone that morning. The house was quiet the way I liked it. Just me, the sound of my thoughts, and the distant hum of silence. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it barely, covered, expecting a delivery. Instead, he stood there, tall, rugged, with those quiet eyes that seemed to know things. "You called for a plumber?" he asked, and I remembered I had days ago. I should have shut the door. I should have excused myself. But something in the way he looked at me. I stepped aside and let him in. And everything changed. I had never paid much attention to the plumbing in my house. That was something my husband used to handle before we divorced 3 years ago. Since then, I had learned to manage on my own. I fixed things when I could, called for help when I could not. But something about calling a stranger into my space still made me uncomfortable. I was used to silence, order, routine. My days were predictable. Coffee at 7, emails by 9, yoga at noon. I liked my solitude. It made me feel safe, in control. But that morning, the control I loved so much had slipped away. The pipes in the guest bathroom had been making strange noises for days. And then, as if rebelling against my neglect, the faucet began to leak uncontrollably. I stood barefoot in a puddle on the tiled floor, sighing at the mess, holding my robe tightly around me as I tried to mop up the water with towels that were no match for the steady drip. I made the call. The woman at the plumbing service said someone could be there within the hour. I thanked her and quickly tried to make myself and the house presentable. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because that was who I was. I did not like appearing unprepared, vulnerable. I cleaned up the kitchen, put on a fresh robe, combed my hair, and touched up the lipstick I usually wore for myself. It gave me a sense of formality, a boundary, a small armor of control. When the doorbell rang, I felt a jolt. Not fear exactly, but a reminder that someone unfamiliar was about to enter my carefully constructed world. I opened the door, and there he was. He was younger than I expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Broad shoulders under a fitted gray t-shirt. Dark eyes that were polite but alert. There was a confidence in the way he stood, but not arrogance. He offered a warm, professional smile. "Hi, ma'am. You called about the leak?" "Yes. The guest bathroom. It is in the back. Please come in." He stepped inside and I stepped aside. I noticed the way he scanned the room. Not in a judgmental way, but like someone taking mental notes. Like someone who had been in many different kinds of homes and knew how to read a space. It started leaking last night, but this morning it was everywhere. I said, leading him down the hall. "No problem. I will take a look," he replied, walking behind me. When we reached the bathroom, he crouched beside the sink and began inspecting the pipes. I stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching him work. He moved with ease, with focus. There was something oddly calming about the sound of his tools clinking softly against the porcelain. He did not make small talk, and I appreciated that. But there was an awareness between us. I felt it growing. I tried to distract myself by straightening the towels and wiping the mirror, but my eyes kept drifting back to him, to the way his forearms flexed as he worked, to the concentration on his face. "You live alone?" he asked suddenly, not looking up. His tone was casual, but the question felt like it carried weight. "I do," I answered, my voice quieter than I intended. He nodded once, then returned to tightening something under the sink. "I have been in this neighborhood a lot lately. These old pipes, they start to give up after 20, 30 years. So you are used to seeing disasters like this?" I asked with a faint smile. He chuckled. "Worse, actually. But this is not so bad. You caught it early." He stood up, then wiping his hands on a cloth. "I will need about 15 to 20 minutes to fix it. I just have to grab a part from my truck." I nodded and he left briefly. I walked back into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. There was a strange tightness in my chest. It was not anxiety. It was something else. A flutter. I told myself it was nothing. Just a reaction to having someone else in the house after so long. But when he returned and our eyes met again, something unspoken passed between us. He knelt again, getting back to work, and I found myself standing closer this time. Not too close. Just enough to notice the warmth of his skin, the scent of soap and sweat. "You seem very good at what you do," I said quietly. He glanced up. "Thank you. I try." And then there was a pause. A long, slow silence that filled the small room like steam. I could feel my pulse in my neck. I could feel the room shift. I had invited him in to fix a leak. But something else was slipping through the cracks. Something I had not expected. Something I was not sure I was ready for. But it was there between the sound of dripping water, the quiet of my home, and the subtle electric pull of his presence. I remember the moment so vividly. It felt like everything else faded, like the walls of the bathroom melted away. And all that was left was the soft hum of my breath and his quiet, heavy silence. The sound of the water dripping from the sink had become a rhythm between us. Unspoken tension filled the air like steam fogging the mirror. He did not rush. In fact, it was quite the opposite. His movements were slow, almost cautious, like he was waiting for a sign from me. But what was I supposed to do? I was standing there in my robe, my hair loose over my shoulders. My cheeks flushed from something I did not quite understand. I did not know how we ended up there, at that edge, but I did not want to step back from it either. He turned off the wrench, setting it down beside the sink with a metallic clink. Then he stood up, his broad figure now directly in front of me. He was close enough that I could smell the scent of soap mixed with something darker, like warm cedar wood and sweat. His eyes held mine. They were not hungry. They were not desperate. They were simply searching. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low, almost gravelly. I nodded. Yes, but that single word carried so many other meanings. It was a permission, a surrender, a longing that had lived quietly inside me for years, walled off behind motherhood, divorce papers, professional attire, and schedules filled with everything except me. His hand reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His fingers did not linger, but I felt that touch long after it was gone. "I did not mean to make you uncomfortable," he said, stepping back a little. "You did not," I replied quickly. Too quickly, he paused, his gaze holding mine. I should go though, but I did not want him to go. I had been alone too long. Emotionally, physically. I did not crave meaningless company. I craved connection. Something real. And strangely, in this odd unplanned moment, with a man I barely knew, I felt more seen than I had in years. So I did something I never thought I would do. "Can I ask you something?" I said. He turned back toward me. "Of course. Do you ever feel like you are holding back all the time? Like you are just performing for the world? Pretending everything is fine when in reality you are tired of pretending?" He blinked slowly. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying weight. Every single day there was a silence that followed, but it was not awkward. It was honest, safe, like we had both taken off invisible armor and were finally breathing in the open. Then he stepped forward again. Not fast, not presumptuously. Just one step, and I did not move away. "I do not want to cross a line," he said. "But I do not want to lie to myself either." My breath caught. But I did not stop him. My heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from the rush of being alive. Of finally being wanted. He leaned in, slower than anything I had ever experienced. His lips hovered near mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of them, but not yet there. "Touch. If you tell me to stop, I will," he whispered. I could have said no. I could have backed away. I could have let the moment pass like all the others I had buried. But I did not want to bury this one. I closed the small space between us. The kiss was not wild. It was not desperate. It was careful, tender, full of all the things we did not have words for. And as his hands came to rest lightly on my waist, I felt my own hand reach up, fingers brushing the back of his neck. We kissed like people who had been denied affection for too long, who had lived through hurt and chosen survival, but secretly hoped for something soft again. When we pulled apart, He looked at me as though he had seen the deepest part of me and did not flinch. I do not know what this is, I said honestly. But I do not want it to be nothing. He nodded, brushing my cheek again. It does not have to be, but only if it is what you want. I looked at him. This man who had entered my home to fix a pipe and had somehow uncovered something broken inside. Me. And I knew. I wanted this moment. I wanted him. He kissed me again, and this time it was deeper. Slower. I felt the way his fingers traced along the edges of my robe, not tugging, not forcing, just exploring, as though he was reading a map across my skin. And then without saying a word, I led him to the bedroom. Nothing felt rushed. No part of it felt like a mistake. It was quiet and respectful, laced with stolen glances and whispered breaths. He kissed the space just beneath my jawline like it was sacred. His hands moved over me like they were learning the language of my body. When my robe slid to the floor, I did not feel shame. I did not worry about the stretch marks or the softness I used to hide. His eyes held no judgment, only awe. Like he was seeing something beautiful I had forgotten existed. He held me like I mattered. Touched me like he was grateful to be allowed. Made love to me like it was not a transaction but a shared healing. There were no loud moans or dramatic declarations. Just soft gasps, steady rhythms, and fingers interlocked like we were holding onto something fragile. Afterwards we lay in the quiet, not rushing to fill it with words. The light from the hallway glowed through the open bedroom door, casting gentle shadows on the wall. He looked over at me. You are still beautiful, you know. I smiled, not out of vanity but because I finally believed it. I do not know what comes next, I whispered. He kissed my forehead. Then let us not worry about next. Let us just stay here for a little while. And for the first time in a very long time, I allowed myself to just be in the arms of someone who saw me, touched me, and reminded me that even after 40, even after heartbreak, I was still worthy of desire. Still capable of beginning again. The morning light crept slowly through the window blinds, brushing soft gold against the walls. I lay there in bed beside him, wide awake, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. His arm was still resting around my waist, warm and steady. His breath was even calm. He looked peaceful in sleep. Like a man untouched by the storm I now felt brewing inside me. Something had shifted. Undeniably, irreversibly. The night had not been just about bodies. It had been about being seen, touched, held in a way I had not known I needed. And now, with the soft hum of morning around us, I was unsure what came next. The silence between us was no longer sensual. It had become something deeper and heavier. He stirred beside me, eyelids fluttering open. When he looked at me, there was no awkwardness, no regret, only a soft knowing in his eyes. He stretched a little, then leaned closer to brush his lips gently against my shoulder. "Good morning," he whispered. I smiled, but it felt like a borrowed expression. Like I was still catching up with myself. "Good morning," I replied. We stayed in that stillness for a few minutes. I wanted to stay in that warm bed, in the comfort of that quiet room, but my mind had already started spinning. What was I supposed to say now? What did this mean? Was it a moment we both needed? Or had we opened a door we were not ready to walk through? He sat up and looked at me as if he could feel the shift in my mood. "You are thinking too much," he said gently. I laughed softly, but it was strained. "I do not know how to do this casually." "I know," he said, with no hint of judgment. "Neither do I." He reached for his shirt, but then paused. "I came here to fix a leak. I did not expect this, but I am not sorry it happened." I sat up, pulling the sheet around me. "Neither am I. But I also do not want this to be one of those stories we never talk about again." "It does not have to be," he said. "But what does it look like now?" I asked. "You are a plumber who showed up to fix a sink. I am a woman who has been alone for too long. And then this happened." His expression softened. "It does not have to fit a script. We are not cliches unless we pretend this meant nothing." I looked down at my hands. "You do not even know me." He smiled. "I know more than you think. I know how you looked when you let your guard down. I know how you kissed like you had not felt wanted in years. And I know that you held on to me like you were afraid it might be your last chance to be touched with meaning. His words struck something inside me, raw and unguarded. He continued, and I know I did not just come here to fix a pipe. I came here and for some reason. I met you. Maybe it does not make sense, but not everything real has to. I looked up at him, my throat tightening. I am afraid. He nodded. Me too. That admission broke something inside me. I reached for him and he came closer, wrapping his arms around me as I leaned into his chest. There was something sacred in that embrace. Not erotic, not desperate. Just two people holding each other because the world outside would not. I do not want to pretend this was just a mistake. I whispered. It was not, he replied firmly. But what if it fades? I asked. What if it turns out we're just two lonely people in the right place at the wrong time? Then we let it fade, he said. But only after we give it the chance to be something more. I closed my eyes, breathing in the scent of him, honest and grounding. I have been invisible for so long. I admit it, even to myself. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. You are not invisible. Not to me. His words were not flowery, not poetic, but they were real. And sometimes that is what saves you. Not grand promises, not perfect circumstances, just someone willing to see you in your mess, your fear, your longing, and not walk away. The silence between us was no longer heavy. It had changed, transformed into something warm and comforting, like the glow of the sun breaking through a stormy sky. He held me and I allowed myself to be held. No more questions, no more hesitation. Just a soft understanding that what had happened between us was real, and that we did not have to define it with any rigid expectations. He pulled away gently, looking into my eyes with a softness that made my chest ache. I think it is time I go, he said quietly, standing up and reaching for his tools. I nodded, but there was no rush. It was not a goodbye. It was just a pause, a moment to breathe, before what came next. The air in the room felt lighter now. The weight of uncertainty eased by the simplicity of what had just transpired. As he left, I stood by the door watching him go. There was no dramatic farewell, no longing. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this encounter had changed me, had opened something in me that I had buried for far too long. Maybe he was just the man who fixed a leak in my bathroom, but he had done more than that. He had repaired something inside me. I closed the door behind me, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened next, I knew I could face it. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive.